Well, there's another controversy, of course, that's occurred more recently involving Eakins, or at least an Eakins painting, his painting, The Gross Clinic. It's a masterpiece. It was hanging for a very long time in the Jefferson Medical College, and somebody wanted to buy it, someone outside the state of Pennsylvania. There was an uproar over this. People were outraged, and the Pennsylvania Academy of Fine Arts and the Philadelphia Museum of Art joined together to raise money to keep the painting here. Could you tell us about that arrangement and what's the story with this painting now?
Sure. Well, it is considered universally to be Eakins' masterpiece. So Eakins is one of the luminaries of the history of American art, and this is his most ambitious and greatest painting. So Philadelphia felt that it must stay in the city where it was painted.
It's a gory painting.
It is a very graphic painting.
Yeah.
And the subject is Dr. Samuel Gross, who was a medical innovator in Philadelphia. And in the painting, he's demonstrating a limb-saving surgery by which an incision was made in the body, a leg in this case, and infected tissue was removed from the bone. And limbs that were infected in this way would have been previously treated with amputation. Mm-hmm. So we're seeing the surgery being performed on an adolescent boy. The boy is nude. He's posed in a foreshortened way, which is very disorienting to the viewer. Dr. Gross is vertical, upright. The light comes in through an oculus. He's in a medical theater, and there's actually light coming in through a skylight, and it illuminates his forehead and his hand. So Eakins strategically draws attention to his intellect and his manual dexterity as a surgeon. His
hands are bloodied.
His hands are bloodied.
Yeah. He has no gloves.
He's holding a scalpel, and there's blood on his fingers and on the scalpel and on the wound. And over in the corner on the left-hand side of the painting is a woman who's presumably the boy's mother, at least a chaperone. And she's recoiling in horror at seeing the blood spill from the wound. In the background is a medical theater, young medical students, and the artist, Thomas Eakins. He's painted himself into the painting. So it's a painting that really compresses so many ideas. You get the intellectual and the emotional aspect. You get, again, the transmission of knowledge. In many ways, I see it as thematically deeply related to Peale's artist in his museum. It is a painting of his time about the scientific and intellectual and artistic achievements of his day. So it's a remarkable painting. It's been described by many scholars as the greatest American painting, including Thomas Hoving, the former director of the Metropolitan Museum.
Okay. You know, there is an extraordinary collection at PAFA of 18th, 19th, and 20th century American art. And the earlier art in particular, I always find so extraordinary. Two paintings by Benjamin West in particular. I wonder if you would briefly, because we have so much to go over here, talk about the 1771 painting, Penn's Treaty with the Indians, and the other painting, the 1817 Death on a Pale Horse, both by Benjamin West, both so different, so monumental, and yet so different.
Well, history painting, a category to which both of these paintings belong, was considered to be the height of achievement in Europe. And West was born outside of Philadelphia, went to London, and became a star. And Penn's Treaty with the Indians in the early 1770s is typical of what made his reputation. It's in a neoclassical mode, very orderly. Everything is very clear. There's a precise narrative, and West was an innovator in this category of history painting because he was representing modern history rather than ancient history, biblical history, and classical literary history, which was the history painting tradition. Death on a Pale Horse takes us back to the Bible, but it takes us forward in its artistic style and represents West's late romantic style. It's very operatic, very dramatic. It's grand in its scale. You can hear it, you can smell it, you can, it engages all the senses. And it's a painting that represents the four horsemen of the apocalypse. So it's also a painting that inspires high emotion, whereas the Penn's Treaty with the Indians is rational, quiet, orderly.
Well, you were telling us about Eakins, Thomas Eakins, who was the director of the museum for a while, and he was also a teacher, as you said, you know, and a controversial one in some respects. But he had quite a number of students of some renown. I wonder if you'd tell us about some of Eakins' students.
Well, one of Eakins' most remarkable students was an artist named Henry Ossawa Tanner. And Tanner was the son of the African Methodist Episcopal bishop here in Philadelphia, and found very early, at age 12 or 13, that he aspired to be a painter, and enrolled at the Pennsylvania Academy of the Fine Arts in 1879 and continued his studies until 1885. And he was one of Eakins' greatest students. And from here, he went to Paris, and it took him a few years to make that step. But in 1892, he went to Paris, and within a couple of years, he was internationally acclaimed. He competed successfully in 20 consecutive salons in Paris, and he won all the prizes that you can imagine. His paintings were acclaimed in the European press as well as the American press. They were collected by the French government, and 3 of those paintings remain at the Musée d'Orsay. And next year, we're very excited to be doing an exhibition of Tanner's work here in Philadelphia that will open in January and run through April, and then go on a national tour to the High Museum in Atlanta and the Museum of Fine Arts in Houston. So he's a great artist, a great Philadelphian, the first internationally acclaimed African-American painter, and someone who stayed in touch with Eakins throughout their lives.
And this image that we have of Tanner's, can you tell us a little bit about it?
It's a painting of Christ and Nicodemus, and many of Tanner's paintings were religious subjects. And he painted portraits, he painted genre scenes, landscapes, but his greatest paintings, and the paintings that really made his reputation, were modern interpretations of the Bible. And what's so modern about this painting, first of all, it's a nocturne, which was an artistic challenge that many artists embraced in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. But as a religious painting, it doesn't rely on halos and other things to convey Christ's mystical, his identity as the Son of God, but instead there's an inner light that emanates from his chest. And so it's just a very subtle touch within the painting that tells you that this is not just an ordinary person.